Hadir perwakilan Kementerian Pendidikan dan Kebudayaan, Direktorat Jenderal Pendidikan Tinggi Koordinator Kooperatif Wilayah 3 di acara portal kami. Dan kalau tak lupa, kami juga berterima kasih atas dukungan yang telah diberikan oleh pihak Direktorat Jenderal Pendidikan Tinggi dan Kooperatif Wilayah 3 hingga saat ini kepada institusi kami.
Today, we gather here for i3L Powertalk, an exclusive event designed for our students, professionals, and all i3L stakeholders.
Pada hari ini, kita berkumpul di acara i3L Powertalk. Acara ini dirancang untuk murid-murid kami, kalangan profesional dan para pemegang kepentingan di i3L.
The topic of today is developing a world-class higher education institution, which will be delivered by Professor Kimmo, Alajoutsijärvi, and Sharon Crispy-Co as moderator. Professor Kimmo Alajoutsijärvi, who is a professor of marketing at Jyväskylä University School of Business and Economics.
Prof. Kimmo is the former dean of all the business school. His recent research interests are universities, management education, and accreditation. He has published in Academy of Management Learning and Education, Journal of Management, Journal of Management Inquiry, International Business Review, Information and Management, Journal of Business to Business Marketing, and Industrial Marketing Management. His recent article, Institutional Logic Business of Business Models, Lessons from the Dubai Business School Mania, has been recognized as Best Study in 2014 Academy of Management Learning and Education. Professor Alajoutsijärvi has also conducted executive seminars and consulting projects in several countries such as Indonesia, China, Russia, Estonia, Sweden, Mexico, Germany, Italy, Canada, and the United Arab Emirates.
Before we start our talk, we would like to inform you of several important information. i3L is a smoke-free campus, therefore all smoking activity are not allowed within our campus.
i3L adalah kampus bebas rokok, karenanya tidak diperkenankan untuk merokok di area kampus kami.
Restrooms are available at each floor, and on the second floor, the restroom is available outside this venue on our left side.
Kamar kecil tersedia di setiap lantai. Di kamar kecil di lantai 2 terletak di luar ruangan di sisi kiri.
In case of emergencies, we have 2 emergency exits, and please do not use the elevator during the emergency.
Pada saat keadaan darurat, kami mempunyai 2 pintu darurat dan mohon tidak menggunakannya pada saat terjadi keadaan darurat.
Kindly spend some time to fill in our evaluation form after the event to help us improve and serve you better.
Mohon meluangkan waktu untuk mengisi formulir evaluasi kami setelah acara ini. Formulir evaluasi ini akan digunakan untuk membantu kami meningkatkan pelayanan acara Powertalk berikutnya.
i3L provides scholarships for students who have parents who work at pharmaceutical companies. For more info, you are welcome to contact our marketing department.
i3L memberikan beasiswa bagi siswa yang memiliki orang tua yang bekerja di perusahaan farmasi. Untuk informasi lebih lanjut, Anda dipersilakan untuk menghubungi bagian marketing kami.
And the most important thing, you are welcome to enjoy the coffee break, and please enjoy the discussion as well.
Kami mempersilakan para hadirin sekalian untuk menikmati hidangan yang kami sajikan.
Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome Professor John Mawat, i3L Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, to give us the opening speech.
Thank you. So, good afternoon. I start with the apology from Chairman of the Advisory Board, i3L, Professor Amin, and our Rector and CEO, Ibrahim, both of whom couldn't be here. So I have a painstaking task to, no, it's not my painstaking task, it's your painstaking task to be here with me for about 10 minutes or so. I have a couple of slides to share with you in a minute, but if I may also especially address a couple of people at least that I know, Dr. Iman, Pak Chris, and Pak Jimmy, President and CEO of IPMI International Business School, which is very close to my heart. They have some journey together also here, as well as Dean Kimmo and all the other guests and honors. I think we have also DP representatives here and maybe cooperatives. So maybe round of applause to having all of you here. This audience, what we are going to do today is called a Powertalk, so it's not going to be a lecture as such, and what we're hoping is that we'll ask lots of questions and any question. The idea is here to be thought leadership, discuss things that of interest of the contemporary higher education. So feel free to interrupt any time and continue on discussion. We don't have an exam after this, yeah, so to speak. Just a little bit of background based on what we talked about earlier. I remember meeting firstly Kimmo in 2009 in Abu Dhabi when I was spending some time, and then some time in Finland where I live now. He's a few people I think who's had the privilege of being in multiple business schools and education for most of his life. And I'm proud to say that Oulu Business School, where he transformed, was the second fastest ACT accreditation in the world. Almost became the best. And Professor Kimmo, from his experiences, has what he has learned, want to share with us today. Where is the higher education heading? Where are universities heading? What kind of universities are out there? You know, what kind of visions do we put today that change the game tomorrow? So it's a very interesting discussion. Even though he's very humble, being a Finnish national, and he's, I think, just got the award for the most cited paper in the world in Academy of Management, Learning and Education, which is the most prestigious journal in the world for higher education. So you could say he's #1 or somewhere there in the world in this field. So it's a privilege to have him here to listen to him, but more importantly, probably challenge him and kind of debate and critical, yeah, to take this forward and say, okay, what does that mean for Indonesia? Yeah, he will probably put forward the ideas in a way that he understands, but by any means, he's not saying this is how Indonesia is. So in the preparation for this session, I was reading up a few things in the last few days, and I came across this Harvard Business Review article that's published yesterday, and I read it today, and I thought, hey, you know, this is really relevant to today. So my opening speech, I got a couple of slides to tell you, and it's a little bit unorthodox, you know, my style, you know, not diplomatic so much. Yeah. It says, why the bad guys win at work all the time? This is the title of the Harvard Business Review. Now, when you look at the bad guys, we're talking about here bad individuals, bad departments, bad universities could be. Because at the end of the day, our personality, our attitude dictate we are good or bad and how we proceed. Yeah? And the Harvard Business Review is saying that if you're too nice, you lose. If you're arrogant and if you're this very, very strict article. In fact, it talks about, so why bad universities and bad people are on top of the companies. More, prerequisite of becoming a boardroom member is you gotta be a so bad person, drive people nuts. And this is kind of what he's saying. Now, I must tell you, in my multinational experience in various companies and others, I partly agree with this. Most people at the top, they're nasty. And they come across as bad people. But the question is, bad people for who? Is it bad people for the people who are working underneath them? Is it bad people for the society? Or is it bad people with the legacy behind? Let's give a couple of examples. Winston Churchill is considered a total alcoholic and a total disaster in his entire life of career. But he played a huge role in making sure World War II ended. Now, when we look back after 50 years, do we talk about all his bad things, or do we talk about him who changed the game? If you talk to Bill Gates, in his book, he says, I don't like killing enemies. That's not nice. Let's bury them alive and send a message to everybody else. That's Bill Gates' vision. He goes to small companies, and he gives them an ultimatum and says, I'm going to take you over whether you like it or not. Have this money or go home, or I'll wipe you out. There's a whole lot of stories like that. Is that right or not? I'm not saying that. I'm saying it is something going on that bad guys seem to win at work, they get better promotion, better salary, better position. What's going on? Maybe you will see from Prof. Kimmo, some universities like that also have become like that. And he's got a very nice term, I think academia or something like that. So I came across this article. It talks about three things. It talks about narcissism. It talks about Machiavellianism. And it talks about, I forgot the term of the P one, the psychopaths. Wow, psychopaths, narcissistic people. Yeah. So here it is. Not all psychopaths are in prison. Some are in the boardroom, or some are in universities. Yeah. So there's three main categories on to psychopath. What does that mean? You're dishonest, you're egocentric, you're reckless and cruel. That's the psychopathic behavior. Personalities. This is the idea that ends justify the means. Use charm, manipulation, deceit, ruthlessness, impulse, whatever it takes to get the job done. Ends justify the means for them. Narcissism is unrealistic grandiosity, inflated self-worth, selfishness. And in Kimmo's lecture coming up, he talks about this grandiosity as some of the categories. He talks about this final Machiavellianism ends justify the means in terms of cash flow and so on. For profit, not for profit people. So that's something I come up. So I couldn't resist and hesitate, but to put this forward for you. Okay, excellent. So the psychopaths and the Machiavellians get to the power, whether they are individuals, departments, companies, or universities. They are at the top of the organization hierarchy and financial attainments. So they got the more money, more power. Now we got it even worse. If you got the money and the power, you dictate the terms tomorrow. They are very competitive, highly competitive. So if you're highly competitive, usually you have a higher chance of winning. They can facilitate seduction, intimidation, whatever it takes. So these are pretty dangerous individuals. And in the hand of the right value system, they will change the world into a very positive place. But in the hands of a very negative value system, they will be very destructive. That's why there's not much difference between the insane person and the genius. The only difference is called one word. Success. Insane, crazy, super gila, and totally successful is a one word success. How success is defined in universities has changed over time. Depending on the country, depending on the region, and Kimmo very nicely looks at how success is defined. So for example, in his traditional university setting, success was university produced knowledge for the knowledge pursuit. Typical high publishing research universities exist for hundreds of years, traditional model, the Humboldt-Didion model, as he called it, the German staff. The modern university, as he turns it in a minute, is trying to look at how they are changing to become more adaptive and so on. Then he also looks at very narcissistic, psychopathic and Machiavellian style, what we call corporate universities, or universities that are bought from companies, or universities that look like a public but act like a business. And he's not saying one is good or one is bad. I think maybe a range of these we still need in the world. But the question is, what is needed, where, and which context? So, going back to the Harvard Business Review yesterday, the instances where the bad guys winning at the expense of the organization, counterproductive, poor job performance, and there's a lot of bullying and other things. So which means it may be sometimes we make decisions at the top. It may be even good for the short run, but for the long run, it's going to kill the industry. In this case, the higher education industry. You can think about a price war between three airlines in an oligopoly. You can be rest assured, one's going to go bankrupt. Pretty soon, probably the other one, they'll have coercion. Sooner or later, they're going to put the prices up and kill the consumer. So even it's against capitalism. So this is something I wanted to think about when Kimmo presents his ideas. What does this mean to you and me of tomorrow's world in terms of learning, education, higher education, knowledge pursuit, which leads to innovation and research development quite closely. Some of the stuff I have read before today or before this Harvard Business Review is this guy called Anthony Giddens. Anybody know Anthony Giddens? Okay, so if you Google him up, he talks about this third way debate. He's kind of counter-arguing this to some degree. He says, hang on a second, guys. We have the government or the semi-government, we have the businesses. If you take these two, why do you keep blaming the businesses and the corporates that they should do better for the company? That's not their job. The industry and the business is called for profit. What does for profit mean? Make profit. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. So let's not blame the company and the business and say they're bad people. They are psychopaths. They're not. They're achieving very good results. And that's keeping the country, GDP going up, employment for the country. Otherwise, the country is bankrupt. Look at Greece and other countries, they're struggling. So at the end of the day, in a capitalistic society, we cannot ignore the fact that we need money. We need cash flow. So Anthony Giddens, some of the ideas talks about the role of the business, role of the community, role of the government. Now, if the government role perhaps is here, they're going to mediate these two. How much bending rules we allow? How much taxes we control? That's the real question according to Anthony Giddens. It's not about a good or bad and so on. So I want you to think about that after today's lecture or during. Then if you look at Keynesian theory, the traditional economic theory, and the more recent Milton Friedman, he says, your only responsibility in a for-profit is to shareholders, that's it. It's not to CSR, it's not to do charity, it's not to do yayasan work. Your job is to answer to shareholders and shareholders only, not stakeholders, only shareholders. If you start deviating from that mission, you are no longer in for-profit. So we got this, kind of tensions going from different parts, as the Milton Friedman says, ultimate responsibility. And the third one I want to put for you is coming from before, Niccolo Machiavelli, an Italian philosopher. Are you also like this, by the way? No, you're very different. He's Italian. Because you went to Harvard, you change your mindset. Yeah, usually they make it worse. Yeah. So Machiavelli says that ends justify the means. It doesn't matter how you get there, as long as you got results, everybody forget all the crime you did in getting there. Not means to an end. Means to an end means a journey. Machiavelli ends justify means the destination. What we see is mostly in the higher education. Universities are judged by the students, by the parents, by the accreditation bodies, and by many others, only the ends, most of the time. They get penalized when they cannot meet the ends. So in that sense, we have to really asked, where do we draw the line? So, based on this, my last slide for you, to hand over to Dean Kimmo, is that I really want to challenge you today to ask, are bad guys necessarily bad? How much bad can we tolerate? Because I think if you try to let people do all the good things, everything, this is called ideology, utopia. It's never going to happen. This is not rainbow clouds and Santa Claus or red carpet. Life doesn't work like that. Life is tough. So in i3L, we try to prepare students, for example, to be tough in getting jobs, in fighting through the competition. Now, if we don't give that, they get out there, somebody else is going to get their job. We don't exist, they don't exist. So these are the constraints. But if you have the luxury of producing students and the government pays all the money and the research and everything, you don't need to worry about that. That's pretty much the European model in the old days. There's plenty of money to just produce knowledge for the sake of knowledge. Most universities in the world do not have that luxury. Neither is 4,200 plus universities in Indonesia, 300 plus in Jakarta alone. They don't have the luxury to do that. And in the absence of that luxury, we got to ask, what are our short-term goals? How do we adapt and agile and achieve short-term success? Because if you don't, you get shut down. And still, not forgetting, we have to prepare for the long term in parallel, like a coin of the two sides, but not one without the other. We have to think about the group generally losing as individuals. So this individuality, we have to draw the line somewhere. How much individual, how much group? Usually the answer is not one or the other. Where do we draw the line? Where do we draw the line? Effectively of the individual and the group. And the goal of the organization or the university is to outperform also the rivals, unfortunately. Rankings, status, prestige, accreditation in this country alone, fund accreditation, time accreditation. These are competitive drives. They are really separating university to university. And they are not always based on that the one with the best ranking is necessarily the best. It just means they know how to fill the forms better. Yeah? That's the reality. Let's talk the reality. So we're going to draw the line somewhere, and I think Kimmo looks at prestige, ranking, accreditation, many of these aspects. So the goal of the organization, the university, partly to outperform the rivals, because that's why we get students and parents and rankings and accreditation. Then these dark leaders or the evil leaders must be minimized in number, or is there a number that we still need to have? Now, I don't have the answers to that, but I hope you'll get much more answers than Dean Kimmo. And without further ado, Dean Kimmo to shed some light on this. Thank you very much.
I'm not sure if I agree with John's all reckless arguments, except that the last one, not doubt leaders for universities. What I'm trying to discuss with you is about, let's say, middle-class universities. And probably Philip Alajoutsijärvi is one of the most recognized authors in this area. He has studied all his life universities, mostly universities, and still he says everyone wants a world-class university. No country feels it can do without one. The problem is that no one knows what the world-class university is, and no one has figured out how to get one. So, if he is so uncertain about what is a world-class university and how to get one, probably that we try to talk about that issue a little bit further. I have 4 goals in this presentation. First of all, I elaborate the history of universities in order to understand big picture where we are now. Without history, we can understand contemporary universities. Then I try to categorize contemporary academic institutions. I've been told that there are 2 kinds of people, those who categorize and those who don't. I'm the one who categorizes. I try to argue that probably basic forms of universities can be called traditional, modern, corporate, and finally megalomania. I will explain later what I mean by this. So I try to identify the major tensions, what is happening in global higher education sector. Higher education is very global industry, if John would define it. So for me, it's not an industry. At least the whole, as a whole, it's not an industry. But let's try to identify those tensions and trends. And finally, we could discuss what are the key conditions that enable to develop world-class academic institutions. Comments?
So perhaps if I could just very quickly give a translation, just in case some of us here would want a deepening understanding of the points here in Indonesian. Jadi Bapak Ibu, hari ini presentasi yang akan di Kimmo jelaskan ada 4 poin. Poin yang pertama kita bisa lihat di sini, kita akan berbicara sedikit tentang sejarah universitas.
Sorry.
Lalu yang nomor 2, kami juga akan mengkategorikan contemporary academic institutions. Jadi universitas saat ini, di hari ini, di era ini ada apa aja, dan ini ada 4 kategori yang sudah di Kimmo formulasikan. Nanti beliau akan berikan lebih banyak definisi dan kriteria-kriterianya. Lalu yang ketiga, kami juga akan identifikasi tren dan juga mungkin ada semacam kontroversi dalam pendidikan tinggi, dan juga terakhir untuk kondisi-kondisi yang sangat diperlukan untuk bisa mengembangkan sebuah world class atau kelas dunia, yaitu pendidikan tinggi yang bergengsi untuk ya world class.
Okay. Basically, what I argue is that what I argue that there are four kinds of universities. First of all, traditional research universities. These are typically European, North American universities, very long, very much prestige. They are looking for prestige. And then there are corporate universities that are typically they can be a part of big corporations for training, internal training, or there are lots of huge companies nowadays that are listed companies, billion-dollar companies who try to educate for profit. And then, let's say, thinking about traditional research universities, we don't have much of them anymore. They have changed all over Europe. They can be called modern universities. I will show the differences a little bit later. And the megalomaniac ones, they in its claims are something total what they are. They argue to be typically they argue to be public or public good. They argue to be research university, but they are not at all that type of organizations or universities. So traditional research university is a very old story. It starts from, let's say, 200 years ago, Wilhelm von Humboldt University in Berlin. It was based on Immanuel Kant's ideas of modern university. What at that time it was modern, now we call it traditional. But the main point was that teaching and research has to be integrated, And that was something new in that time. Typically, universities, whatever they can be called, were only teaching organizations, not much or not at all research. They changed the university system in Germany, and which became the role model the rest of the world. You have to remember that until 30s, the language of science was German, not English. It was Hitler who ruined the German education system, higher education system. And after that, it's the language of science is English, and North America has most academic muscles. So it was important to America, a little bit more democracy, but I would say that the key characteristics of that type of universities were that in the United States they were organized as private institutions. All the Ivy League universities are private, but they are not at all for profit. They have public mission. That's why they don't need to pay taxes for it. They full academic freedom and totally non-profit ethos. Of course, we have to remember that most of them are pretty rich. They have that luxury. Harvard balance sheet is about $40 billion. So, but the rest of the Ivy League universities are much poorer. But and I would say that in Finland, all of our universities were traditional universities in 80s. Now we don't have them. What was important for traditional universities, cooperation, collegiality, longevity, they were bottom-up organizations. Universities were led by professors. So now we have lost that type of command system in most of the universities in the Western countries. So I have some kind of rosy glasses to try to remembering when I started career in 80s, but probably it was not that rosy. I had many negative issues from those universities. So modern universities, they are developed for originated modern policies and also management were very old political movements that changed universities from 80s until now. Because there are lots of corporatization has happened in those universities. So lots of consciousness, monetary valuation, research contracts. In the same time, the massification has happened in the Western world. The universities are not at all elite organizations anymore. They are for masses.
Kimmo, just a little bit. I know that there are a few words here such as massification and corporatization and democratization. Do you mind defining these?
Please.
No, actually, maybe you can define them for us. A little bit, like let's say with democratize, let's say.
For instance, corporatization means that these traditional universities have been transformed into corporate-like forms. For instance, probably I have to show here. When we talk about traditional and modern universities were to serve society, bottom-up organizations. Professors chose the deans, and deans elected. They voted for directors, etc. Money was unimportant. It was enough. Okay, we could have more, but in any case, it was enough. It was not the issue to discuss in that time. Faculty was tenured, lifelong workplaces. Research was primarily monographs, and students were considered as active co-learners. Now, for instance, because of massification, we have, universities have tripled their size in Western countries within the last 25 years. So, huge amount of students. That is massification. And by the way, students are not anymore active co-learners. They are more or less empowered customers. They rate you. So that's a huge difference in the culture of those organizations. Status is important, even top-down management style. If I go back a little bit. So the third type, corporate universities. They are sometimes training departments of large corporations, sometimes independent for-profit firms. They are typically private institutions, of course. By the way, they have been in Western countries centuries. Actually, the business schools were, all of them, 300 years or 200 years ago, were private for-profit organizations. There were no business education in traditional universities. But in 100 years ago, traditional universities started to have business schools or faculties of business. So they lost the game. So quality education was considered after that not private, but public, or non-profit at least, although private.
So Kimmo, just to interrupt a little bit, so just to make sure we all understand. So you were saying that before this general trend moving, there was no business school, and then
all the business schools, 200 years ago, all the business schools were for-profit companies. But there was a lot of business education. But they were typically small for-profit companies.
So you're saying
they couldn't compete with traditional universities, let's say, from 100 years ago.
So you're saying that so the corporate university is sort of like a hybrid between. So is it like that, or
corporate university is old story. It's a corporate universities are corporations. They are for profit. They educate people for profit. Okay. Typically, corporate universities did not compete with traditional degree-granting universities. it has changed from the 90s. For instance, the biggest corporate universities have gained or have gained accreditations, state accreditations, granting degrees, even doctoral degrees. I will discuss a couple of examples of corporate universities later. Then the fourth type of university, we call it megalomaniac university. I don't know what's it's Indonesian. It's this grandiosity, or so these universities have grandiose in its claims. They argue that they are world class, they are research oriented. Sometimes they even say that they are for public good, not for profit, but they are private profit corporations that pretend to be public universities. So that's why I want to differentiate these universities from corporate universities that typically do not claim to be research oriented or grandiose or world class. Corporate universities were for training, original, not education.
Sorry, I might give a few examples in the Indonesian context. So Telkomsel, PLN, all of these companies, they have corporate universities, but they're not trying to educate people in the country. They're just doing training for their employees. That's a corporate university.
What is the difference between corporate universities and megalomaniac universities? That megalomaniac universities use about half of their revenues for aggressive marketing and advertising. Think about that. Finnish universities that are, let's say, modern universities, they use about 2 or 3% of their incomes for marketing or advertising. Megalomaniac universities use more than half. And think about that from the perspective of students. It's mostly if universities focus on recruiting new students, not taking care of their contemporary the contemporary students, I would say that it's very difficult to be a world class, because it's very inherent that being third class means that you take care of your students. So probably this is too complicated, but what I continue to say is that grandiosity is being democratized. Everyone wants to eat and feels entitled to it. So this type of talk has changed societies. Everywhere where we use grandiose concepts, being something more than we actually are. And so do universities as well. So what I argue that traditional universities has transformed into modern universities. They are in its claims are much more grandiose than before. World rankings and many other things are very important. Before university, it was the most important thing for university was meaningful existence. Now it's a positional competition to get higher in pecking order of universities. And because it's very difficult to get higher in the pecking order, in reality, it's much easier to have that type of image claims. Corporate universities have also developed the same kind of tension or transformation. One of the biggest corporate universities is the University of Phoenix. It started in the 80s. The first cohort was 8 students. Now they have more than 100,000 students. It's listed company, probably value is about $4 billion US. And you see, This was the old logo, and this is the new one. It's some, it's pop art. And probably you know that this is an original from Finland. It was not my point here, but they bought the name of the stadium for 150 million. For 150 million for 10 years. So they use lots of money for image building, image playing, aggressive marketing, much less for student instruction, much less for teaching than marketing. Okay, I'm a professor of marketing. I don't have anything against marketing, but now it's that the balance is not in the proper. It's not in a proper balance. So, but one point what I want to argue is that think about that there are 18,000 universities in the world. About who knows? But there is no world-class research university in corporate universities or in metal mining universities, and they have never transformed into traditional research university or modern research university. It seems to be impossible for corporate universities to transform into research universities because of their business model. Research is expensive. You have to have huge governmental subsidies or large endowments years after years. That's why and by the way, they are looking for profit. Why they would focus on those things that are not good for software profit. But also bad things happen, or almost close to happening. Traditional universities are sometimes transforming into corporate universities or megalomaniac universities. And I give an example. This is the Thunderbird School of Global Management. It was considered one of the top schools in the world in international management. Everyone knows they have 40 alumni, but they have problems, financial problems. There is another university, I'm not sure if it has much to do with the university, is known as the International University. This is probably the biggest corporate university in the world. They have 600,000 students. Think about that. In 40 countries, mostly in developing and emerging countries. Although it's originally from 6 states, but most of the campuses are in developing or emerging countries. So, in 2013, Laura and Hilbert established a joint for-profit company focusing on programs. And this agreement was heavily protested with Thunderbird alumni, 40,000 people. Because they were very worried about the legitimacy, status, and reputation. And by the way, their own reputation, their own status. If their degree is from a for-profit company, they lose the status. So they could, and finally aggregating body rejected the proposed document. So now it's something else. It's Arizona State University and Thunderbird has had merged. But my point here is that for instance, the U.S. Senate committee argued that overwhelming documentation of overpriced tuition, predatory recruiting practices, sky-high dropout rates, billions of taxpayers' dollars spent on aggressive marketing and advertising, and companies scaling regulations to maximize profits. So this was not the Marxist leftist party who argued so. It was U.S. Senate committee, and that's why they could stop the merger. and alumni are much more happy. And think about that. They try to manage that top down. They didn't discuss with the 40,000 alumni. It was a surprise for all the alumni. Come on, if you know, alumni are cursed by marketing managers almost for all the school. And they didn't care to discuss with them. So, that idea in any case. So, Sarah, do you have something to say before my conclusions?
I guess if there is any thinking or any comments just on a flyby perhaps. So just to summarize a little bit, and I'll say it in Indonesian afterwards too, that this was, so Kimmo just talked about the two different universities with those two different breeds, and they're trying to merge together. And how here in this slide it says that the alumni, the group of alumni are not very happy because of the difference in status, difference in prestige, and jadi untuk recap yang tadi kita baru saja berbicara tentang ada dua universitas yang sedang bergabung bersama, dan ini alumni dari Thunderbird, salah satu universitasnya itu sangat menentang keras ini karena ada perubahan dalam status, dalam prestasi yang mereka bisa terima oleh karena mereka alumni dari sana. Jadi so is there any comments? Ada komen, ada pertanyaan mungkin saat ini?
I'm not saying that this is the only account. Please.
I have one question. Do you think that among those four categories of universities, there's one that is best among the others? Because as a student, I want my universities not to be the megalo what something. Yeah, because they don't focus on like they don't focus on their students, and they focus more on their image making, right? So as a student, I don't want to go to that kind of university. So do you think there's one category that's best?
There's a huge number of global university rankings, but they are only for research universities. Because from research you get prestige, and wealth, by the way, follows prestige. So it's of course, if you want to have listed ranking lists, it's always modern research universities who are actually on the top of 1,000. There is no corporate university, no for-profit university in top 100 list. I would say that, and also that this Laureate International University says that they are corporate university, but they are doing public good. At least they want to build that image. They have a Bill Clinton for honorary counselor. I don't know how many videos, but in the case, but they want to. They say that okay, we belong to that class, but we are better than the others. I'm not sure. More.
Perhaps if we can just probably just get through your points first, and then we'll. Is that okay?
What I argue here is that it's very difficult to develop a world-class university. You cannot buy it, you cannot import it. You can develop it very long term, and mostly I would say so in certain kind of conditions. First of all, I want to say that conditions in the national state, there has to be desire for having world-class universities. And also government has to subsidize in the way or the other. For instance, if they don't need to pay taxes, it's some kind of subsidizing as well. So, but the universities have to have sustainable budgets, followed by a sustainable regulatory trade. You know, in Finland we don't have any corporate university. They are not allowed. Because only non-profit universities can award degrees. I'm not saying that all for-profit universities are bad, but in Finnish context, we haven't allowed them. So, conditions in the university, we have to have human resources, autonomy, academic freedom, and allocation resources based on merit. So, but this is also quite a job to do. If you don't have good academics, how to hire them? Because typically academics want to come to the schools that are high quality academics already. So it's very difficult to start from scratch. John tries to do it here with his colleagues. But of course it helps if there are endowments. Money makes it easier, much easier. And condition of time. It takes years to develop top-tier university. Not possible in our time. And finally, I want to add that American-style university does not mean third class. There are so many American-style universities. So I would be very proud of American higher education system as a whole. Okay, they have the best universities in the world, especially business schools. But if you think that they have more than 3,000 universities, after 100, they are pretty lost. So I just want to remind that we have to be critical. Not all American is high quality. Although, especially in business schools, it's very many times in that way.
Okay, so at this point, I think in about like 30 seconds, I'm going to start opening the floor up for questions. But before that, if you don't mind, please help me out a little bit, just to make sure that everyone is on board, that we're all on the same page in terms of what we talked about, and perhaps before we can start asking questions, just so we identify all the terms. So maybe we can start with our students first. One of you, will you share with us the 4 types of universities just now, and just give a brief definition so you guys can cooperate? It's okay. You can start, maybe Muslim, because you asked the question.
Might bring up something. Yeah, it's already there.
Yeah. Okay. So those are the traditional ones: the modern, the corporate, and the megalomaniac. Would you mind, probably, because this one there's no definition here. Maybe any of us, it doesn't have to be our students. Please help our students out. Some of the.
What do you think?
Jimmy. Do you mind pressing that mic?
Thank you very much. It has been a very interesting presentation. I believe that what you presented is quite. This is the first time actually I've seen this categorization.
I invented this last time.
Right. It's something that I haven't really thought about, but a lot of these make sense, and I've seen over the last few years with our community as well. For example, corporate universities, as Professor John Novella mentioned, businesses are developing and building their own corporate universities. Most of them are. They have an aim to educate their own people internally, because they believe that they know their people best. But generally, from our experiences, even when they have corporate universities, they feel that they need to go into more have cooperation with research as well as academicians who know better the theoretical as well as the science
By the way, it's interesting because general tendency is business is outsourcing.
Right.
In the case of management education, it's insourcing.
Yes, that's right, that's right. Yes, I also sit in the boards of several corporate universities, namely Telkom University, and I see that that they also believe that the science of business practices need actually to be also learned from the traditional so-called research universities. One thing that struck me is that when I went to Harvard for my master's degree, and you're right, when you have built such a great image for your university, not only companies but individuals tend to be drawn. For example, you don't have to be a Harvard graduate to actually put in some money and donate a lot of endowment. And then it actually needs, we need money to build a good university, and we need to have money to run an excellence, operationally excellence universities. But in that sense, it is hard for, there are obvious universities, as you mentioned, like Phoenix universities. They came to us also just a few months ago and wanted to take over actually IPI, for example, Phoenix University, because they believe that the Indonesian market is a good market. So I think that what you presented here is quite unique.
That's important point. Even this modern research universities may have international branch campuses. They are not the problem.
Exactly.
They want to carry money from here to the mother campuses. But in many cases, opposite was true.
Well, they were successful in Brazil, for example. They took over one of the old universities with a few thousand people, a few thousand students, and they grew it to be hundreds of thousands. I doubt, although that the quality of the education has improved, as you mentioned. They are American universities, but there are exceptions to American universities that can provide that type of operations excellence and very knowledgeable scientific and research-based universities. So I think the challenge is how to be, I would say, to be balanced between being able to sustain yourself as a good university and to be able to maintain that operations excellence. So you have to have that drive, to get the necessary money to be able to.
Exactly what was the problem with Thunderbird. They didn't have enough cash flow.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Hostile acquisition after that.
Exactly. I think it's very important. I'm a turnaround specialist. I was CEO in a lot of companies, and I've turned around many companies in the past. And this is my first venture into education. It's very interesting because, in business, your aim is straight for that profit and for a viable business. But in education, you have to be a balance. You have to survive and get sufficient money to run a good university or institution, but you also have to have that passion to provide education for the society.
Good.
Maybe we can have, so I guess to just summarize, I think that was a really good discussion too, that there is that balance, the delicate balance between being able to survive and being able to still produce, not only produce graduates, but also like really staying true to the university strata philosophy, I guess. Anybody else who has questions or comments or maybe clarifications from the points here?
Okay. That is what you want.
Or it should be, yeah. Okay, so I think before we end, it's a pity that Dr. Professor John had to leave for his trip, but we actually have a token. Okay, so actually at this time we'll present the token of appreciation. Thank you so much, Dr. Kimmo. Do you mind if so maybe he'll give the token to you.